Okay, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about entrepreneurial happiness, something that I am very passionate about. I'll give you a really quick rundown of my life to date. So you can probably tell from my accent, I am English originally. I was born in Bolton. I spent 22 years in England, finished my degree, and then moved to Australia. And I spent 20 years in Sydney, and then most recently I've moved to America. So I'm gradually moving around the world in English-speaking countries with a red, white, and blue flag, but skip New Zealand, for obvious reasons. Sorry. What I've done career-wise is I started my career at Pricewaterhouse, as it was back then, and consulting. So I was a management consultant, corporate finance, a little bit of an auditing at the start, but I got very bored. But I became a qualified chartered accountant. Was lucky enough to travel all over the world, working with different companies, helping them devise strategies, helping them implement strategies, dealing with change management. Then I left when IBM bought PwC Consulting. And there's a guy I met called John Cotter, who's an American professor at Harvard, who told me that words matter. And they absolutely do. And that's one of the most important things I've learned in my life. Because I decided to leave PwC when I got this email which said, Mark, your old PricewaterhouseCoopers employee number was this, and your new IBM serial number is this. And I decided I didn't want to be a serial number working for IBM, so I left. I then became general manager of business development for Australia's largest retailer, which was a lot of fun. I had lots of money to spend buying things, implementing things. It was probably the best job an ex-consultant could get inside a corporate company. Then I left that to become the chief executive noodle of Wagamama in Australia, not in the UK, but in Australia. So lots of fun with noodles, growing the brand in Australia, dealing with 500, average age 23 in the company at the time. Learned a lot about culture, a lot about values. Became a coach at that point. I got myself an executive coach because I had no idea what a CEO was. It's probably the most stressful time of my life because it glorified for me what a CEO was, but then when I actually got in and did it, I realized there was no peers. You couldn't sort of banter and go out for a drink after work and sort of have a chat with peers. There was no one above you except a board that you met once every 3 months. And everyone below you was looking for you for direction. So I was a little bit lost. So I got myself a coach. I had an amazing time for 18 months. And at the end of that, I decided I wanted to be one myself. So I learned how to be a coach. I studied NLP. I basically read every book that you could read at that point on what coaching was and motivational psychology and how to get inside people's heads. Because I thought it would make me a better parent as well as a better CEO. I ran Wagamama for 4 years and then I left Wagamama and I did my own e-commerce startup. It was basically a copy of Zappos. Does anyone know Zappos in America? Okay, so I did a copy of Zappos in Australia, and which was an amazing time. I grew that company from no revenue to $25 million in revenue, from no employees to 70 employees. We had an amazing culture, a lot of fun, great core values. And it also introduced me to a guy called Tony Hsieh. Does anyone know Tony Hsieh? He's the CEO of Zappos. So he's a pretty amazing guy who grew a business and eventually sold it to Amazon for $1.2 billion. When the principle of the company was happiness. And I'm wearing a Delivering Happiness t-shirt because I also work for Delivering Happiness. So cut a long story short, I sold my company, we got an exit and we sold it in a trade sale. I then moved to Nevada in the middle of the desert, left our beach house in Sydney to go and live in Las Vegas, which is where I live now, with my children that you've all spoken to. Thank you for that. And now what I do is I work in a company called Rocketeer. And it's called Rocketeer because we have the ROC acronym is something that's very important to us. It stands for Return on Community, Return on Co-learning, Return on Collisions, and also very importantly, Return on Capital. And what I do now, which I'm still amazed is what I get to do every day, is I actually work with Tony Hsieh. Well, not directly, but I help all of Tony's companies. So he's invested in 150 companies. We've got this little thing called the Downtown Project in Las Vegas where we're trying to sort of create a community in Las Vegas where there wasn't one before. So I'm lucky enough to be able to do coaching, mentoring, training, consulting, facilitating with a team of 5 people to 150 companies. And we're paid by Tony. The companies, they don't pay. So effectively, we get to work with tons of people that ordinarily wouldn't be able to afford to work with a coach or a trainer or a consultant. So that's what I do now. And I'm here for the whole weekend, so if anyone's interested in what that is, I'm not going to spend any more time on that. So I'm going to just throw up some random things that I did this morning at 3 a.m. after being woken up and then couldn't get back to sleep whilst I was watching the Scotland vote come in, which is very exciting. So the first one, is your state serving you? Not necessarily your national state, but your emotional state. So what state are you in right now? Would anyone be happy enough to shout out what state they're in right now? Steady state? What would that be like? Still. So calm, still.
Calm but excited.
Ooh, excited.
I emailed you a few days ago.
I do remember, Tom. Suspicious, fantastic. Does anyone actually realise, and I'll get to this in a second, but you get to choose the state you're in. It's kind of neat as a human being, we actually get to choose the state we're in. Sometimes we get triggered, an emotional trigger will happen, but then we have a choice. We can either stay in the state that we're in, or we can choose to be in a different one. So have a guess, as an entrepreneur that's going to raise money from an investor that they've never met before and they're just about to walk in a room, what would be the most optimal state or states to be in, do you think?
Confident, yeah.
Confident? What else?
Grounded.
Grounded? What else? Happy? What else? Calm. What states would you, enthusiastic, what states would you not want to be in?
Grumpy.
Stressed, grumpy, fearful. Okay. So, what was that? Drunk. Sometimes it helps. So what a lot of entrepreneurs don't realize is that you're not necessarily in control of your state, and therefore they don't choose to be in the right state when they go into those meetings. So a lot of the work that I do with a lot of entrepreneurs is actually teaching them how to actually get into the most optimal state for whatever it is you're about to do. Now, if that's an investor meeting, then there'll be a certain state you want to be in. If it's standing in front of your entire company, again, giving a motivational speech, that's a different state. If it's firing someone, you're probably in a different state. If it's giving someone angry feedback, someone that really pissed you off, that didn't do something that they promised they would, it'd probably be better to be in a different state. So being in the right state and making sure that it serves you in that moment is some of the work that I do, and something that I would encourage all of you to practice. How many personalities do you reckon we have? 8? I got about 20, I think. Who can be in a really... Is anyone any good at getting into an angry personality? Okay, would you want to stand up for me?
No, talking about
Brilliant. So that's an angry state. What do you call the angry state? Do you have a name for it, or is it just...
Stroppy bitch.
Stroppy bitch, okay. So I named all my personalities. It's really fun. You should try it yourself. Just make a list of all the different personalities that you know you have inside. You know that when someone's really made you angry, you can get angry. You know you can also get really happy. You know you can be really excited. You know you can be really loving. You know you can be really fearful. You know you can be really sad. Just name them and then try them on, because you never know when that state might be the best state you need to be in. And to be able to name it and know exactly which one it is and when it can come out is really cool. Next thing, you have 4 powers. You might not realize this, but every single one of you in this room has 4 superpowers. Now, if you don't know you've got these 4 powers, then you're not practicing them. If you're not practicing them, then they're not going to be strong. And if they're not strong, you're not going to be the most effective human being that you could be. So you've got 2 internal powers and 2 external powers. Your 2 internal powers are, any guesses? 2 powers that you have that no one can control, that are inside of you that I wouldn't know. Thought would be one. No? That's sort of thought. Feeling, yeah. So thoughts and feelings. So thoughts and emotions. And then 2 external powers. These are powers that I have that no one can control, that I can sort of do and you can't stop me. Yep, physical and vocal. Perfect. So your 2 internal powers are thoughts and feelings. Your 2 external powers are speech and action. So I can choose to say anything I want in this moment right now. I can choose to do whatever I want. I choose what feeling I'm having right now. There may be a trigger. There may be like an emotion that pops up because someone might say something that I wasn't expecting. But I also know how I can actually get myself out of that and rationalize that. And probably the best power the power that's not usually trained as well as the others is the emotion one. So just really trying to understand where emotions come from, what they do, why they even exist, where they exist, what you do with them. And a lot of people don't really give a lot of thought to that, and a lot of people therefore are slaves to their emotions. Someone bought me a T-shirt, which I probably should have worn today, which was "Don't let emotions be your bitch," which I really liked. But it's so true. So I'll just give you a really quick 20-second rundown of where emotions come from and what they do. So in your head, you have a map of the world. It's your version of reality. It's come from all your experiences, your childhood, your lessons, the books you've read, the things you've done, the movies you've watched. And you've got this movie in your head, this perception of what reality should be. And then when reality is different, either positive or negative, an emotion pops up. That's what they're there for. If the world was exactly how you thought it should be, there would be no emotion. It would just be. You'd be calm. If something happens in a positive way, then you get a positive emotion. If something happens worse than what you expected, you get a negative emotion. That's where emotions come from. Then what you do with them is, well, you can do many things with them, but what I do with mine is, firstly I go, how interesting, I'm feeling an emotion. What emotion is that? Where did it come from? What do I need to do with it? And that's how you can very quickly, like in 5 seconds, choose what message you want to get from the emotion, choose what you want to do with it. Don't let it override you. So if something, you drive to work, and if in your map of the world, you think no one should ever cut you off when you're driving, and then one person cuts you off, it's going to trigger a negative emotion because in your map of the world, no one should ever cut you off. Some people allow that negative emotion to stay with them the whole day. Ruins the whole day. Some people can very quickly get out of it, like in a matter of seconds. So that's one thing I urge all of you, if you're not in control of your powers, definitely practice, because when you actually do master it, it's incredible. To know that you can choose what feeling to have, to know that to manage your own thoughts, to use your words wisely. So as we say, you've got these 4 powers. I do a lot of work with people on their 4 powers, and I always hope that they use them for good, because you can use them for evil, you can manipulate people with them, but if you use them for good, you can make amazing things happen. Next thought I'd leave you with is there is no failure, only feedback. So like I say, I do a lot of work with entrepreneurs. In the community that I work in, we had 3 suicides in the last 18 months. 2 of them were entrepreneurs. One of them was, well, I guess you never really know why someone would do that, but one of them was because the company failed. And maybe this person thought they were a failure because their company failed. So one thing that's very important to remember is there is no failure, there's only feedback. One of my favorite quotes from Oprah Winfrey is that it's only failure if you learnt nothing and you didn't enjoy any part of the process. So I know a lot of startups, and a lot of startups do not work, they do not succeed, but the people inside those companies have a lot of fun. They learn lots. So how could that possibly be a failure? So I think when you realize that everything you do, and I used to always say to people, I fail my way to success. In our company, we celebrated mistakes. So that's very, very important to do, to not take things too seriously, but to try and use everything that doesn't go according to plan as something to learn from, then converts failure from being something that's bad to being something that's really cool. So I'll give you one test. How many people here like surprises? Bullshit. You actually only like the surprises that you expected or you wanted. The surprises you didn't want, you call problems. So that's what we were trying to reframe all of those problems as, surprises. Surprises are good. You learn from them. Sometimes you enjoy them, sometimes you don't. Another thing that I work on a lot with people is self-esteem and self-confidence and the difference between the two, which is hugely important. Is anybody here a parent? I'll pick someone here. Do you want to stand up? What's your name? Simon. Have you got a boy or a girl, Simon? Both. Who's the first? Toby. When was Toby born?
2001.
Okay. So, do you remember the moment that Toby was born? Yeah. Okay, so if I walked up to you and said, hey, I would like to buy Toby off you. How much would you sell Toby to me for? Is it... I got a big checkbook. Huh?
I wouldn't.
You wouldn't? Why?
I'm quite happy having him.
So, what, priceless? So there's no price I could give you, so it'd be priceless in your mind.
Well, we'll probably have to go for the details of how often I get to see him.
But would you sell him, really?
No.
And what about 3 weeks later when he's waking you up at night and he's got pooey nappies? And does his price go down then? No.
That was all part of it.
Okay. And then when he's 6 years old and he's doing really well at school, does his price go up?
Yeah.
If it's priceless, can it really go up? Because if you say yes, then it's conditional on something. So no, it's still priceless.
Not really giving it a lot of thought.
No, that's cool. Well, thank you. So the key thing is, and I've tried this myself, tried this with lots of people, you would never sell, there's no price you would sell your child for, ordinarily. There's no price you'd sell them for. And that's really what self-esteem is supposed to be. It's supposed to be unconditional, not conditional to anything. As soon as you attach something to it, then it becomes conditional. When it becomes conditional, it can go up and it can go down. And when self-esteem goes down, that's not good. So if I had a whiteboard, normally I draw a graph, and from the day you're born to the day you die, your self-esteem should be a flat line, always high, just a flat line. Your self-confidence, however, is very different. Your self-confidence fluctuates. When you're born, when Toby was born, he couldn't do nothing. What would his self-confidence be when Toby's born and he can't do anything? He can't feed himself, he can't go to the toilet, he can't speak, he can't do anything. So pretty low self-confidence. So you start off really low, gradually through your life you kind of go up, and then maybe toward the end of it you go down again because we start to regress and you can't change enough, you can't go to the toilet yourself again. So self-confidence is very different to self-esteem. So self-confidence, we say, is to do with your human doing. It's doing stuff. Some stuff you do well. Some stuff you don't do well. And even in one day, your self-confidence can go up and down and up and down. But your self-esteem should be flatlined. Always high. So one of the things with entrepreneurs that I found over working with many, many of them is if they make the mistake of thinking that self-esteem is actually self-confidence, and then their company doesn't work out, and then your self-esteem drops really low, that's when you can do things that are silly. But if you realize that just a company not working out is simply just you being a human doing and giving it a go and trying your best, and knowing that your self-confidence will always bounce back again, then it makes it a lot easier to cope with those stresses. And it's a roller coaster ride for entrepreneurs. There's ups and downs. There's a really good article in the Inc. magazine called The Psychological Price of Entrepreneurship, which any of you are in that space, I'd urge you to read. But just deals with the same thing. So the psychological makeup of an entrepreneur that makes us special and being able to do amazing things also has a flip side that can work against us as well. Okay. Given that we're at the Happy Startup School, we'll talk a little bit about the science of happiness. So I'm lucky enough to work for a company called Delivering Happiness, as well as working for Rocketeer. So Delivering Happiness was created, so Tony Hsieh wrote a book called Delivering Happiness. He then created a company called Delivering Happiness, and a friend of mine, Jen Lim, is the CEO of that company, the CHO of that company. And that company takes a lot of the science of happiness and tries to make it relevant to people. So we take the best of science, we're science agnostic, we don't value one scientist over another scientist, but essentially what we want to do is try and make it practical. So I'm just going to share with you 4 fundamental things in relation to happiness. So 4 things that if you have these 4 things, then you'll be happier. Not necessarily unhappy if you didn't have all 4, but you would be happier if you had them. So the 4 things are meaning, control, progress, and connection. So meaning is having a sense of purpose and meaning that's bigger than just yourself. So believing that you're part of something bigger than just you. Being purposeful. One of my favorite quotes is, "The meaning of life is to give life meaning," which I think is just so true. And I'll give you an example of how that works in business, since as you're all business people. So I used to run my Zappos copy. So it's an online shoe store. It's a large online shoe store. There's a guy in the warehouse who's picking shoes. And I just walked up to this guy one day and said, "Hey, so why is it important to you to pick the right shoe?" And he said, "Oh, well, if I don't pick the right shoe, then Joe's going to be really upset with me." And I remember thinking, geez, if that's the only reason why you're picking the right shoe, that's probably not the best. So then we sat down and we said, "Okay, who's the shoe for?" And he said, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, you do, because it's on the pick slip." And he said, "Oh, Rebecca." And I said, "Where does Rebecca live?" He said, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, you do, it's on the pick slip." And he said, "Oh, Rebecca lives in Melbourne." And I said, well, how old do you reckon Rebecca is? And he said, I don't know. And I said, well, what shoe did she buy? He said, I don't know. I said, well, look in the box, because you've got it in your hand. So it was a bright red stiletto. Why do you think Rebecca in Melbourne might have ordered a bright red stiletto? I said. And we had a little chat about what it might mean for Rebecca to order a bright red stiletto and what it might mean if she didn't get a bright red stiletto, if instead she got a bright green stiletto or she got a stiletto in the wrong size. And then he started crying. And then I said, well, what's going on? I see tears, what's going on? He said, oh my God, I just thought Rebecca has just bought this amazing dress and she's picked these shoes specifically for this dress and she's going to a party in 2 days' time. And she's going to meet the man of her dreams, and they're going to get married and have children and live happily ever after. And if I stuff this up... but the amount of meaning that he put on it was huge in comparison to Joe will be pissed off with me if I don't get it right. So then we had a little thing, every menial task to put meaning in and call it a menial task, spelled M-E-A-N. So put meaning into everything that you do. Control is just having a sense of control, feeling like you're in control of your own destiny. In companies, you can do a lot of work on that by sort of cascading the strategy down into the organization, making sure everyone realizes, no matter what level they are in the organization, what they can do to deliver on the strategy of the company. Progress is feeling like you've got a sense of progress, you're moving in the right direction. So we have lots of KPIs and we measure things and we share them with people so that they feel as though they're making progress, feel as though you're moving in the right direction. And then finally, connection. So being around like-minded people, having a strong culture where you've got shared values with people, that's also very important. I'll focus on the culture bit for a second now. I worked with a startup a few weeks back and I said to him, hey, so we're gonna do that culture workshop. And he said, no, I've decided I'm not gonna focus on culture till next year. And I said, okay, so what culture do you have now? He said, no, you didn't hear me right. I'm not working on my culture until next year. And I said, no, I get that, but what culture do you have right now? He said, well, I haven't got one because I'm not working on it until next year. And I said, well, no, you'll always have a culture. So make sure you've got the culture that you want. So I do work with people where we say, okay, what is the current culture? And it might be here. And what is the desired culture? And it might be here. There could be a big gap between the actual culture and the desired culture, and you need to close that gap. And we do that with values, we do that with measurement, we do that with people, we do that with personality testing, you do that with making sure you hire the right people, making sure you're bringing in the right people with similar shared values to the company. But there's a lot of work you can do to make sure that your company has the culture that you want, not the one that you just happen to have. And if you read Tony's book, he started a company called Link Exchange and ended up having a culture that he didn't want and he didn't like working there. And then in his next company, he decided that he really wanted to put a lot of effort into culture. He made 4 times the money when he focused on the right culture than he did just focused on making money. And then the final thing I'll just share with you, I just shared a little bit of, we just founded this company, Rocketeer. It's not that old. We just went through a little bit of a values exercise ourselves and a purpose and meaning and culture exercise. So I'll just share some things with you because values really work when you bring them to life. And one thing I learned a few years ago was to use talisman, use icons to bring values to life. So I'll start off with our purpose. So we chose Yoda. So our purpose, we say, is to unleash the potential within an entrepreneurial ecosystem to transcend awesome. And Yoda is our icon. So whenever we're thinking about our purpose, we're imagining Yoda's literally sitting on our shoulder, giving us advice. It totally transforms the purpose if you can put an icon on it, if you can actually make it real, almost bring it to life, let it have a personality. It's incredible. We did the same thing with our values. We've got 4 meta values. We have values underneath each of these, but these are our 4 meta values. So we've got bold, truth, love, and inspire. And we created icons for each of these as well. So for bold, we've got Neil Armstrong. Truth, we've got Neo. Inspire, we've got Oprah Winfrey. And love, we have Elmo. And again, just imagine during your day if you had those 4 people sitting on your shoulder, helping you work out what to think, what to say, how to behave. It's your conscience. It's your values conscience. And it really, really helps us. It helped me at Wagamama, helped me at my Style Trade as well, and it's really helping me now at Rocketeer too, to bring your values to life through icons and have these talisman. Because then what you can do is you can find the favorite quotes of Elmo, the favorite quotes of Neo, the favorite quotes of Oprah, the favorite quotes of Neil Armstrong, and help people really understand what that value means by using that. So I hope I've just been able to share a little bit of, I guess, my journey over the last bunch of years. And I think the final message I'd just like to leave you is really finding entrepreneurial happiness is entirely up to you as individuals to go inside, to realize that you're in control. You control your destiny, you control your own level of happiness, and there's a lot of work to be done. It doesn't just happen, sadly. But it's well within all of you to increase the level of happiness in your life and in your business. And I know, just through experience, that once you do that, you see huge productivity improvements, innovation improvements, less absenteeism, less turnover, higher sort of retention rates, which is massively valuable to any company. Thank you.